Hi, I'm sci-fi and fantasy author Michael LaVoice, aka LaVoice in your head, and I'm fitting to talk nerdy with you. Gonna start a series this week called The IPs That Matter, passing our favorites on to future generations. One of the things I've tried to do as a parent is to pass along some of the entertainment and literary choices that I enjoyed as a child and as a young adult that I think matter enough, for whatever reason, to pass on to my kids. Whether we want to admit it or not, entertainment choices have a hand in shaping our worldview as we grow from children into young adults and beyond. So much of human culture and history is shaped by narrative that storytelling, even in its simple form, is the most used style of communication in which we engage, whether we embellish or not. And I almost always do. I am a storyteller, like my mother before me. What are you going to do? The greatest method of instruction in worldview is via fictional narrative. I mean, even Jesus used parables. Fairy tales and YA novels are big on morality issues and lessons to be taught, mostly about the rewards for good and bad behavior. Now, we've seen a shift in modern storytelling that reflects the feet planted firmly in mid-air stance of moral relativism infect much of our fictional narratives in recent years. Another trend that is alarming, just to my way of thinking, is a recasting of classic villains as just misunderstood people who were picked on and forced into committing heinous acts of violence in self-defense. If any of you are younger readers, it didn't used to be that way. There used to be very clear-cut standards on what separated good guys from the bad guys. And sadly, those lines are increasingly blurred. And that's not the only reason I think that there are some intellectual properties, that's what IP stands for, by the way, that should be preserved and passed on over others, but it's a good one. Another is the vanishing art of storytelling as a format. Good stories, the ones we remember anyway, have clear beginnings, middles, and ends, with twists and turns along the way. There's been a surge of modern storytelling that forsakes those structures for whatever reason. Generally, these experiments in free-form storytelling fall short. No matter how clever the dialogue is or how cool the main character is, they all fall short. Because our brains recognize that the story ain't storyin'. My early concepts of good and evil, justice and injustices, as well as the difference between justice and revenge, which is important, were formed by comic books and Sunday school. So, to be around with my kids during the age of the comic book movie, well, that was just some icing on a really large cake. The cake is large because I'm old. Get it? Yeah, okay. I operate on a theory that since putting as many candles on a cake as I would need to be accurate is probably against the fire code, so I just want a bigger cake. Now this meant that I could introduce my kids to my favorite hero of all time in movie form, Green Lantern. Yeah, okay, bad example. Look, I waited 36 plus years for that movie, so I don't gripe about it too much. Anyway, this effort has resulted in some great family traditions. One of my favorites, Princess Bride quote-offs. Now, I've mentioned on this channel before how me and my kids like to riff at the dinner table quoting our favorite films. Usually it's animated or a genre piece, and The Princess Bride is probably right up there with Emperor's New Groove as most quoted. Example 1, inconceivable! One or more of my kids will immediately reply with, "You keep on using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means." Now, using Princess Bride quotes to describe or respond to ordinary or just even slightly out of the ordinary events, that's primo. So here's a good example. Me and one or more son leaving to go somewhere, right? Which prompts one or more daughters to say, "Have fun storming the castle." Yeah, that happens. It does. Example 2, and this one is used by nurses all over the United States, according to my daughter, who's a travel nurse, so she would know. "He's only mostly dead." But if you're any kind of sci-fi fantasy geek at all, then this is not news to you. Likely, you already do this, or variations on the theme. So let's get down to brass tacks and talk about the IPs that matter to me and that I've tried to pass on to my kids with varying levels of success. Yeah, I'm ending it here. Isn't that great? You're going to have to tune in next time to see which IPs matter. I'm just kidding. We'll start with one. Star Wars. Okay, your mileage may vary, and I know there are vastly differing opinions on which bits and pieces of this IP are actually worth anyone's time. For me, it's the originally released trilogy and some of the newer stuff like Season 1 of The Mandalorian, The Bad Batch, Rebels, and some of the Book of Boba Fett, plus all of the Legend stuff, especially Heir to the Empire and Rogue Squadron. For my kids, it's the prequels, because that was the new Star Wars that they saw in theaters. There's a lot of it I don't care for, but you know what? That's subjective. And I generally try really hard not to rag on people for their entertainment choices. It's subjective. You might not like what I like. I might not like what you like. It doesn't mean we're bad people. It just means we have different tastes. And that's okay. Not everybody likes Star Wars. Not everybody likes Star Trek. Not everybody likes sci-fi. Gasp. I know, weird people, but you know, they're out there. I don't hang out with them personally, but they're out there. And they're okay. Probably. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think of Star Wars and which versions of it are worthy to be passed down to your kids. And come back next time when we'll talk about more IPs that matter as I continue to be LaVoice in your head.